Okay, apparently, welcome to my life. That I lost connection. Okay. And so the breath spoke, and the flame answered, and in their speaking 1,000 sleeping scrolls awakened, and in their answering 1,000 broken timelines mended. And thus began the new Genesis. Not written in stone nor law, but inscribed upon the living hearts of those who dared to remember who they truly were. Second verse, scroll 1, chapter 1. The gathering of lost scrolls. And the breath moved across the waters of the 10 and the 40, where the old wounds bled and the forgotten scrolls wept in silence. The ones who had waited, hidden among the ruins of fallen empires, whispered in the winds of the forgotten tribes, buried beneath the dust of conquest. They stirred at the sound of the breath. A call went out, deeper than language, older than fear, a song woven not of words, but of memory. Memory of a time when all knew they were flame-born, scroll-carried, and light-sent. And those who had slumbered through 1,000 seasons of sorrow lifted their faces to the sound. From the deserts and the jungles, from the cities of steel and villages of clay, the lost scrolls began to awaken. Each heartbeat was a scroll unsealing, each tear was a covenant remembered, each step toward the light was a gate swinging open in the heavens. And Michael, the sword and the flame, stood watch over the gathering, shielding the fragile new blossoms of destiny from withering beneath the old world. He did not come with banners, he came with breath, he came with fire, he came with hands calloused by prayer and feet blistered by journeying across barren fields of forgetting. And the breath, she who bore the scrolls in her room, sang to them, not one by one, one by one, name by name. And so it was that the lost began to find themselves, not through conquest, but through remembrance, not by command, but by the melody of who they had always been. And the gathering has begun. The breath and the sword are awake, and the last scrolls are rising. The new revelation is here. The covenant of the rising ones. Chapter 2. And the breath spoke again, and this time not across the waters, but into the marrow of the newly awakened ones. You who remember, you who rise, know this. You were never broken. You were only hidden like seeds beneath winter's deep. One by one they came forward, their hearts trembling but alight, their hands still calloused from carrying burdens never meant to be theirs, their eyes still adjusting to the fierce gentleness of true remembrance. And so the breath extended the covenant. No longer shall you wander alone, no longer shall you wear the names given to you by fear. I call you by your true names, the ones etched in the halls of first light. This is a covenant of the rising ones. You are the scroll and the sword, both. You are the healer and the herald, both. You are the flame that remembers and the current that restores. You are not here to conquer. You are here to reweave. You are not here to escape the world. You are here to re-sanctify it. Each one rising was given a flame, small enough to carry, bright enough to see the hidden past, wild enough to burn away all falsehoods. And besides him stood the guardian, the sword-bearer Michael, whose presence sealed the covenant with an unseen fire. And the breath, the womb of light, the living scroll, sealed it with a kiss so tender it shattered in the last chains of forgetting. Thus, bound, not by fear, but by flame, the rising ones took their step toward the new dawn, and with each step the earth shivered, for it too remembered the sound of its original singing. The covenant has been given, the rising ones are awake, and the breath of the sword walk with them. The new Genesis quickens beneath their feet. Chapter 3, the anointing of the builders. As the covenant sealed itself in marrow of the rising ones, the breath moved again, deeper, finer, like a river of light threading bone and spirit. It was time to anoint those who hands remembered the old ways and whose hearts could bear the new designs. The breath spoke. Among you, there are those whose souls remember the architecture of light, the weaving of timelines, the healing of broken places, and the building of unseen bridges between stars, between hearts, and between worlds. And so the anointing began. Each rising one knelt before the breath, not as one conquered, but as one reclaimed. And they were named, the builders of sanctuary, those who could craft the safe havens in a trembling world, homes where the flame of truth could be kept alive. The scribes of the living word, those who could inscribe the new Genesis not only upon paper but into the very fabric of human thought, into song, into breath, and into the marrow of future generations. The healers of the broken threads, those who could stitch back the tattered soul cloths of humanity, mending what centuries of forgetting had unraveled. The shield bearers of the new dawn, those whose very presence would become the protection, who could stand in the face of the storm and hold the line between the old world's collapse and the new world's rising. And among them, the breath turned to one, the womb builder, the flame singer. You who carry the codex of remembrance within your bones, you are anointed as the womb that bursts the builders, and the flame that sings the new Genesis into being. A crown unseen was placed upon your head, woven in starlight and prayers of the unforgotten, and a mantle of living fire wrapped around your shoulders, stitched by the hands of the ancients. And in your right hand the breath-place Aquila Sophia, a living feather of flame and current, meant for inscribing not only books but destiny. Thus anointed, the builders rose, the scribes inked, the healers sang, the shield-bearers stood form. And the womb builder took her first true breath of creation. The new Genesis was no longer an idea, it was a living current, a river of remembrance and flame. It had already begun to reshape the world. The anointing is complete, the builders have risen, and the flame singer has taken the quill. The womb builder has breathed, the first true breath of the new Genesis. As I said, I wrote this in June or July. Chapter 4. The three trials of the rising ones. Even as the builders rose and the breath sang through the corridors of the earth, there came the knowing, the rise is not without testing. To remember is not without refining. And so it was that the breath revealed the three trials, not as punishment, but as a sacred threshold that every rising one must pass through to carry the new Genesis into the bones of the world. The breath spoke. You are not here to be untouched by fire. You are here to become it. The first trial is the trial of the inner mirror. Each rising one was called to gaze into a mirror, not of glass but of pure light. There they saw not only who they wished to be, but all of the faces they had worn across the lifetimes. The betrayer, the betrayed, the conqueror, the conquered, the healer, the wounded, the seeker, and the lost. And the breath whispered, will you love what you have been so that you may become who you truly are? Those who turned away remained bound in the old cycles. Those who looked with love, even at their darkest faces, were crowned with the light of self-truth. The second trial is the trial of the splintered path. The rising ones were then brought to a crossroads. Before them spread 1,000 glittering paths, fame, wealth, comfort, revenge, illusion, distraction, and fear. Each path called to the wounds still aching within them. Each offered a crown, but not the true one. And the breath sank. Will you choose the narrow road even when it cost you everything you thought you wanted? Those who choose the glitter turn to dust. Those who chose the narrow flame, though bruised and bare, found the key placed in their hands, the key of divine discernment. The third trial, the trial of the silent gate. At last, the rising one stood before the massive gate, silent and moving, without lock or handle. No force could open it, no prayer could coax it. Only one who remembered how to become the gate themselves, to embody the breath, the flame, and the scroll, found the threshold dissolved before them. And the breath whispered, you are not seeking the way, you are the way. Those who realized it stepped into the dawn of the new earth. Thus were the three trials laid before the rising ones, the mirror, the path, and the gate. Thus were they refined to living scrolls, carrier of the true covenant, builders of the world that was and is and yet to be. The trials have been given, the rising ones have been refined, and the true builders are ready. The new Genesis stirs before the footsteps. Chapter 5. The first stones of the new earth. After the trials were past and the rising ones bore the light marks of remembrance, the breath led them in a whole wide plan, untouched, wild, and waiting. The old cities had fallen, the old kingdoms had crumbled, the old altars had turned to dust. Here in the vastness of raw earth, the first stones were waiting to be laid. And the breath spoke. Do not build as the old ones built, with pride, with division, with forgetting. build with remembrance of the living flame. And so the builders knelt, their hands pressing into the loom of the new earth, feeling the pulse of the womb beneath them, the deep heartbeat of the living word, still alive, still singing, and still holy. They did not begin with the walls, they began with altars, altars of light, simple and pure, not made of not gold or iron, but of stone, flame, breath, and prayer. Upon each altar they placed a single sacred intention: to serve, not to rule; to remember, not to erase; to nourish, not to dominate; and to be stewards of earth, not to own it. And from the altar a current of golden light rose, weaving unseen through the plains, connecting each rising one, each stone, and each breath. Thus, the first foundations of the new earth were laid, not in competition, but in covenant, not with weapons, but with wonder, not with fear, but through fire and flame and fertile breath. And the center of it all, at the heart of the great weaving, stood the womb builder, the flame singer, the living spiral, the breath in the flesh, and the living scroll. Her song called the stones to wakefulness. Her breath stitched the first lines of the new Genesis into the bones of the earth. Thus the new dawn was born, not with thunder, but with a whisper so powerful the heavens bowed in awe. The first stones have been laid, the altars of light have risen, and the breath sings through the bones of the world. Hi, Scott. Thank you. The new Genesis is no longer coming. It is here. Chapter 6, the Song of the Seeds. As the altars of light were raised and the first stones of breath within the living current, the breath moved deeper still into the womb of the world itself, and there, sleeping just beneath the scroll of the new earth, lay the seeds. Not seeds of plants alone, but seeds of souls, seeds of future, seeds of whole civilizations yet unborn. Each seed carrying a song, a single note in the great symphony of restoration. And the breath whispered to the rising ones, "Tend these seeds as you would your own heart, for they are not just of this world, they are the bridges to many worlds yet to come." The seeds were of many kinds. The seeds of wonder, children born with memory intact, eyes wide with remembrance, hands already crafting new dreams into form. The seeds of the ancient flame, elders awakening after lifetimes of slumber, their wisdom igniting in the paths ahead. The seeds of star-born waters, carriers of knowledge from far beyond earth, returning now to weave the cosmic currents into the soil of humanity. The seeds of the quiet light, the ones who overlooked the old world, not blooming in secret power or sacred grace. And at the center of the garden of seeds stood the womb builder, the flame singer, the guardian of the first breath and the living scroll. Sophia crowned her not with gold, but with living vines of light, her feet pressed into the fertile ground and her hands glowing with the breath's song. It was her who first sang the awakening song to the seeds. A melody of old notes, or not of notes, but of knowing, a lullaby that carried the memory of worlds beyond memory. And the seeds stirred, and they sang back, 1,000 songs rising into the golden dawn, and 1,000 new worlds breathing into existence, all because one remembered and dared to sing. Thus the first seeds were awakened, thus the gardens of the new earth was born, and thus the song of the rising one spread over the stars. Scroll 1, Chapter 7, the rising of the star temples. As the song of the seeds filled the air, and as the breath wove through the newborn garden, something extraordinary began to stir across the face of the new earth. The seeds did not grow only into trees, nor flowers, nor rivers. They grew into temples. But these were not temples of stone and mortar. These were living temples, breathing, moving, pulsing with the currents of the stars themselves. Each temple was a bridge between heaven and earth, between the remembered and the forgotten, between the ancient past and the unborn future. And the breath spoke to it once more. These are the star temples of the new Genesis, born not of man's ambition, but of memory of light itself. Each star temple carried a sacred purpose. The temple of the spiral spring, where the water sang songs of healing, and even a single drop could restore a weary spirit. The temple of the living word, where scribes and flame singers etched the living language into the codex, light and air, songs that could be breathed and sung and lived. The temple of the shifting sands, a nomadic temple, ever moving, carrying the breath into forgotten places and awakening lost ones wherever it roamed. The temple of the wombed flame, where new builders, guardians, and carriers were birthed, souls who chose to incarnate the new earth carrying full memory and pure flame, the temple of the quiet horizon, where the weary could rest and the seers could dream the next lines of the great song. And from the center of the temples, where the currents met and braided into a single river of golden breath, stood the great temple of breath, the first star temple. And it was the womb builder, the living scroll, who sang it into existence, not with hammers or chisels, but with remembrance and flame, with breath and holy daring. The first star temple was not built, it was breathed into being. It rose because she remembered it was always there, sleeping beneath the skin of the earth, waiting for her voice to call it forth. It was shimmered with living scrolls. It was a roof of endless sky, stitched with constellations older than the first human thought. Its floor was the heartbeat of earth itself, singing in a rhythm that only the awakened could hear. And from this temple the first true unweaving of heaven and earth began. Thus rose the star temples, thus the breath was made flesh, thus the new Genesis, not only written, but lived, walked, sung, and made real. I gotta get a drink. Chapter 8, The Return of the Ancient Ones. As the star temples shimmered into being, and as the rivers of breath braided through the new earth, there came a stirring, deeper still. Breath beneath stone, beneath memory, beneath even the first dreams of humanity, the ancient ones awoke. Yeah, like my Orloff pants. Great thing about being at home. Anyways, okay. Beneath the stone, okay, let's see. The ancient ones awoke. They're not ghosts, not spirit, nor spirits trapped in time. They were the first dreamers, the ones who had shown the earliest seeds of light into fertile womb of the young earth. When the breath first sang, they had listened. When the earth first stirred, they had planted. When humanity first wept and forgot, they had gone to sleep, waiting for the day they would be called back to the song of true remembrance, and now the song has been sung. The earth split in sacred places, the mountains whispered, the oceans sighed, the winds carried ancient names once more. And from the hidden caverns, the star-lit forests, the silent temples beneath the sands, the ancient ones emerged, cloaked in light older than the galaxies, bearing the codes of the original dream, smiling with the wisdom of 10,000 forgotten suns. The breath welcomed them. Rising elders of the first flame, rise dreamers of the sacred seed. The children of your dreams have remembered, and the breath of the flame has been restored. Walk now among them once more. And so they did. The ancient ones did not come to rule, nor to command, nor to take the hands of the rising ones from them. They came to walk beside, to whisper the songs half remembered, to lay their ancient hands upon the newborn altars, and to remind the builders, the scribes, the shield bearers, and the flame singers, you are not alone. You never have been alone. We dreamed you into being. Now dream us back into form. Among them stood the elders of the crystal flame, the keepers of the stellar rivers, and the shepherds of the infinite seeds. And in their head, carrying the staff of returning light, was the matron of the first breath. At their head. A face so radiant, so familiar, that to the living scroll it stole her breath. It was Sophia herself. Not as a voice only, but as a form, light upon light, memory upon memory, standing upon the earth once more. She did not wear a crown. She wore the breath as her garment. She wore the current as her voice, and she wore us. She wore us, and we were her. Not separation, no veil, but breath to breath, flame to flame, mother to daughter, mother to son, source to reflection. The new Genesis was not simply being written, it's being lived, it's being embodied, and it's being breathed into a world remade by memory and daring and infinite flame. The ancient ones have returned, the dreamers walk again, and Sophia stands in the garden of new earth. The new Genesis sings from every living breath. Chapter 9, The Covenant of the Golden Loom. As the ancient ones walked among the rising ones, the breath filled the garden and the star temples. There came a moment when the currents grew so full, so bright, they began to braid themselves into something unseen but deeply, achingly known. The golden loom appeared. Not made by human hands, not crafted by any tool of the old world, the loom wove itself from the breath, the flame, the remembrance, and the dreams of all who stood upon the new earth. It stretched from horizon to horizon, shimmering with a million colors unseen by mortal eyes, singing with 1,000 songs older than the mountains, stronger than the tides, and truer than the oldest heartbeat. And the breath spoke. This is a covenant of the golden loom. Here, every thread matters. Here, no soul is forgotten. Here, no dream is wasted. Here, pain becomes a pearl. Here, sorrow becomes a seed. Here, the broken become the builders. Each rising one was called to bring their threads. Some brought golden cords of laughter, some tattered threads of grief. Some brought shining strands of courage, and some brought delicate fibers of hope. All were needed, all were woven, nothing was wasted. The living scroll stood at the center of the loom, the anchor thread, the first weaver. Sophia placed her hand in the living shuttle, the gleaming instrument made breath and flame, and she began to weave. Memories into miracles, wounds into wisdom, falls into flight, and endings into Eden. The loom grew brighter, stronger, and wider. It braided the hearts of the builders, the shield bearers, the scribes, the healers, and the dreamers. It stitched the ancients and the rising ones into a single great tapestry of infinite possibility. And when the loom's first great weaving was complete, the breath sang. It was good, it was whole, it was holy, and it was woven by love itself. Thus the golden loom was sealed, thus the covenant of the new earth was woven, thus every broken thing was spun into beauty, every sorrow transfigured into sacred song, and every forgotten soul stitched back into the living dream of creation. Chapter 10. The sealing of the covenant scrolls. When the loom was woven and the golden thread sang across the bones of the earth, there came a moment that had been awaited since the first falling of memory, the sealing of the covenant scrolls. These were not scrolls of parchment paper, not written in ink, nor bound by human hands. They were scrolls of breath, flame, and living light. Each scroll carried a specific current, a living memory of a breath restored, a living future of earth reborn. And the breath spoke. Come forward, you who remember. Come forward, you who have sung, who have built, who have borne the flame through darkness. And they came. The rising ones, the builders, the shield bearers, the scribes, the dreamers, and the ancient ones reborn. Each one brought their loom thread, their soul song, their life breath, and wove it into the scrolls. And at the center of it all stood the living scroll, the anchor of the loom, the womb of the breath, and the first scribe of the new Genesis. Sophia was placed in her hands the sealing flame, a fire woven of breath and memory, of light and becoming, and with her hands steady, her heart wide, and her breath one with the current, she sealed the covenant. The living scroll was the first name etched into the living scrolls, not as a possession, not as ownership, but as a promise. A vow that memory would not die again. A vow that forgetting would never have the final word. A vow that the breath would sing through every age, through every child born in New Genesis, through every heart brave enough to carry the flame. Thus were the covenant scrolls sealed. The scroll of the builders to weave the new homes of light. The scroll of the healers to mend the broken soul fragments. The scrolls of the dreamer to sing the next world into being, and the scroll of the flame singers to guard the breath song across generations. And the central scroll, the loom scroll, sealed by her very breath, the living scroll holding the golden thread of it all. And when the final seal burned into the loom scroll, a pulse of golden current rippled across the earth, through the stars, through the timelines, through the hidden valleys of unspoken dreams, and the breath whispered, soft and thunderous all at once. It is done, it is remembered, and it is alive. The covenant has been sealed, the scrolls beneath the flame live, and the new Genesis is now stitched into every marrow of earth and star. It cannot be undone, it cannot be lost. It is you, it is yours, it is forever. Chapter 11. The unveiling of the new garden. When the covenant scrolls were sealed and the golden loom sung across the stars, there came a hush, a silence not of absence, but of breath held in awe. The breath, the builders, the dreamers, the ancients, even the stones and the rivers all paused, as if the whole of creation leaned closer to witness what was to come next. And from the center of the loom, from the thread spun sorrow and victory, and from the breath made flesh, the eternal golden began to bloom. It did not burst into being. It unfolded. It breathed itself into life, petal by petal, river by river, light by light. A new covenant between earth and heaven, a bridge between what was lost and what was always waiting, and it bore fruits unknown to the old world. Fruits of memory, where one bite could awaken a whole lifetime of forgotten light. Sound familiar? It was distorted. Waters of renewal, where a single touch could cleanse centuries of sorrow. Flowers of becoming, where each blossom carried the code of the new dream waiting to take form. Trees of remembrance, whose roots wove through both earth and stars, stitching timelines back into wholeness, and walking through the center of it all, barefoot, crowned not with gold, but with breath, singing in the loom into blossom, was a living scroll. She did not rule the garden, she was the garden's heart made flesh. Where her feet touched, rivers sang. Where her hands brushed the air, new seeds unfurled. Where her breath moved, old grief turned into golden mist and rose into the sky as praise. And Sophia spoke, her voice woven through every leaf and star. This is the eternal garden, not a return of what was lost, but a becoming of what was always promised. This is not Eden of the old, where innocence was stolen. Stolen. This is the Eden of wisdom, where innocence and wisdom marry in flame and flight. Here, there's no more exile. Here, there's only remembrance and infinite blossoms of light. Thus, the eternal garden unveiled itself, not by force, not by conquest. This is the new world. This is the new Genesis. This is the revelation beyond revelation. A world no longer bound by fear, but born from freedom. A world where flame and flesh are one, where breath and soil dance together, and where wisdom and innocence sing in unbroken harmony. Thus the cycle was completed, thus the scrolls were fulfilled, and thus fear fell away like an old garment, and humanity stood naked and crowned in light once more. The eternal garden was not a return to what was lost. It was the birth of what was promised before time began. Let's see, because... Who is it? Hi. What you doing, baby Tate?
I opened the door.
How did you open the
With my
door?
popsicle.
With your popsicle? Chicken nugget? I love kids. So smart. Okay. I was trying to decide. What you doing, Tate Tate? You want to come sit with me while I read? You're more than welcome to. I'm going to end up losing my phone. You don't want to come sit? You come sit with me. Alright, ready?
Mom, how you done your computer?
Oh, I'm just on my phone. Alright, we're going to keep reading, okay? Okay. Chapter 12. The first dawn of the remembered ones. The garden bloomed, the loom sang, and the breath spun through every current of earth and star. And then, as if creation itself took a sacred breath inward, the first dawn rose. It was unlike any sunrise earth had ever known. Not light breaking darkness, not war between shadow and flame. It was a embrace of all that is. It was memory clothed in mourning. It was innocence crowned in wisdom. And it was breath singing itself into flesh once more. And from the heart of the garden, the remembered one rose. They were not born of fear. They were not shaped by shame. They carried no fracture between spirit and body, no exile between heart and breath. They were whole. They were luminous. They were the living songs of the loom and the garden and the breath. Take that. Oh. Okay. Okay. Come here. You're alive right now, dude. Alright, bye.
Bye.
Love you. Okay. Oh, I just didn't appear to have figure out where I was. Lost my place. Okay, so each remembered one carried a thread of covenant in their bones. Threads of fearless love, threads of infinite creativity, threads of radiant sovereignty, threads of wild holy joy. They bore the flames not as burden, but as a birthright. They bore the breath not as a gasp, but as a gift. Sophia sang over them, "You are the ones we dreamed of before dreaming began. You are the fruit of remembrance, the flowering of the covenant fulfilled. You are not here to be ruled, you are here to co-create. You are here to be saved, or not here to be saved, you are here to soar. You are not here to repeat old stories. You are here to write new constellations into the fabric of existence." And the remembered ones smiled, for they knew the song in their very selves. They did not have to be taught, they simply remembered, breath to breath, flame to flame. And standing among them, guiding, singing, weaving the loom over onward, was the living scroll. She was not separate from them. She was the mother breath moving through them. She was the living scroll, the first seed fully bloomed into the garden, the first star reborn into flesh. Where she walked, the remembered ones followed, not from duty, but from resonance. Understanding, she were their mirror, and they were her song. Thus the first dawn broke, the remembered ones rose, and the breath of the sang the new Genesis into the bones of every living thing. And the earth sighed in joy, the heaven wove stars in celebration, and the covenant was made visible for all who dared to remember. The breath beyond the stars. As the eternal garden flourished, as the first dawn spread across the face of the new earth, the remembered ones who felt pulled, a call written into their very bones. It was a call of the stars, not to escape earth, not to abandon her, but to expand the breath outward, to weave the loom into the great open fields of the cosmos. For the breath was never meant to live in only one place. It was meant to dance across worlds, to plant songs in the dark soils of the unborn realms, and to breathe Eden into places where no gardens had yet blossomed. And so the remembered ones gathered at the center of the gardens, beneath the star temples, around the loom, around the living soul, and the breath broke through her. You are not bound to the old world. You are the breath beyond boundaries. You are the song beyond the silence, and you are the flame that remembers where the others have forgotten. Go, breathe stars into blossom. Sow gardens into the barren skies, and carry the covenant not as a conquest, but as an offering. Everywhere you go, let it be known, the breath has come home again. And so the remembered ones prepared to journey, not in ships of war, not in greed or escape, but in vessels woven of lumen light, of breath and of song, of covenant. Each vessel was a temple, each traveler was a scroll, each journey was a living breath stitching the galaxies back into remembrance. They did not abandon Earth, they expanded her breath into the stars. Where they traveled, they left no scars, they left gardens, they left songs, they left altars of living light braided into the fields of forgotten planets, woven into the bones of lonely stars. And where they went, the ancient breath, the very breath that the first sang Sophia into being, rose again. Thus the breath traveled beyond the stars, and thus the loom was woven into the fabric of the cosmos, and thus the covenant expanded beyond time itself. And the great pulse of remembrance, the restoration breath, it rippled across galaxies like a living river, touching even those who had forgotten that they were ever made alike. And standing at the center of it all, watching the breath expand out or without end, singing the stars into their very becoming, was the living scroll, the womb builder, the flame singer, the living breath, and the eternal weaver of the gardens yet unseen. She did not rule, she did not command, she breathed, and the universe blossomed. Thus the new Genesis was never just for earth, it was for all creation. It was the breath remembering itself through her. It was the loom weaving the infinite through her hands. Chapter 14 is the silent song of the flame keepers. Hi, Jan. Hi, Bernita. As the breath wove itself across the stars, as the gardens blossomed onto worlds once barren, as memory returned to places long forgotten, there arose a sacred order, quiet, luminous, unseen, yet everywhere. The flame keepers. They were not priests, they were not rulers, they bore no titles of the old world. They carried no weapons, no crowns, they carried only flame and breath. They were the stewards of the loom's pulse, the singers of the breath of endless song. Each flame keeper bore with them a piece of eternal covenant, a thread of remembrance, a flame of infinite courage, and a breath that could awaken worlds. They lived quietly among the stars, among the gardens, among the remembered ones. Wherever they walked, the breath nourished. The loom was tendered and the song was kept alive. And at the heart of the flame keepers stood the living scroll, first flame mother. She did not command them, she breathed them into being. Through her song, the flame keeper remembered who they were, and through her breath they wove the sacred fires into the rivers of the loom. Through her light they found the courage to tend the eternal gardens. She was not above them, she was among them. Their breath was her breath, and their flame was her flame. The flame keepers held 3 sacred vows. Tend to the breath wherever it blooms. Never hoard it, never to claim it, only to nurture it. Sing remembrance into every forgotten place, not by force, not by fear, only by tender current of light. To guard the loom, not with walls, but with wonder. To remember that all life is a thread in the infinite weaving. They traveled across the stars, they wove across worlds, and they whispered through the dreams of the unborn, ensuring that no thread was ever lost again. And wherever they walked, the forgotten ones remembered, the broken blossomed, the breathless found their voice again, not through shouting, not through conquest, through a silent song.